Hey, this is Riccardi, Director of Research Collections for the Louis Armstrong House Museum, Armstrong author, Grammy winner, producer. I'm all Armstrong all the time, and you are listening to In Love with Jazz with Roger Chung.
The pale moon shining on the fields below. The folks are crooning soft and low. You need tell me, boy, because I know, yes, when it's sleepy time down south, yes, the soft wind blowing through the pinewood trees. That folks down there live a life of ease. When old mammy falls on her knees, when it's sleepy time down south, yes, steamboats up the river coming to go in. Ba-da-ba-da-ba-yum-ba-ba said, splashing the night away. Ba-ba-do-do-do-do and says, you hear those banjos ringing, and our folks are singing, and they dance, yes, the break of day, yeah. Dear old Southland with this dreamy sound, you take me back where I belong, right in my mammy's arms. But that is yes. Good evening, everybody. Thank you very much, folks.
歡迎大家又再收聽 D100 爵士鍾情 In Love with Jazz。我係你哋嘅主持人 Roger Chung 鍾一諾啊，啱啱聽過係 back to back 兩首 Louis Armstrong 收錄喺佢最新嘅 Louis in London 呢一張哇 reissue 嘅大碟，係一個 expansion。以前咧曾經出過嘅呢一隻碟，好耐之前叫做 Louis Armstrong Greatest Hits Record Live， 但係咧重新編排過，重新一張應該係今日咧我哋會 find out 係咪一個 complete version 嘅 BBC 嘅 recording。咁啊啱啱聽過嘅兩首歌係 When It's Sleepy Time Down South 同埋 Indiana。而今日咧我非常之有幸可以請到呢一隻碟 Louis in London 嘅其中一位嘅 producer Riccardi 上到嚟作爵士鍾情同我去傾下偈。Hey Ricky, welcome.
Hey,
welcome.
Thanks for having me.
With Jazz with me, Roger Chung. It's a great honor to have you here on the show. And I see on your background, I see one of those classics, some of those classics. Satchmo plays Fats Waller, I think.
Oh yeah,
of them, and then the W.C. Handy.
Yes.
Cover. Those are classics.
Oh yeah, no, I'm surrounded. I've got crates of 78s here. I've got books back there, box sets. You know.
My God, and it's a great honor. So let me introduce you a little bit. Ricky Riccardi is the director of the research collections for the Louis Armstrong House Museum, and you're also author for three, if I'm correct, three biographies of Louis Armstrong.
Yep.
And they seem to span almost the entire career of Louis Armstrong from the early years, which is actually going to be released soon, right?
Yeah, I did it backwards. Yeah, so
you did it backwards. So the first one, I think you started with, it's called What a Wonderful World, The Magic of Louis Armstrong's Later Years.
Right.
Which is extremely relevant to today's interview because we're going to talk about Louis in London, which happened in his later years.
Yes.
So that was a book released in 2011, according to Amazon.com.
It's all true. It's all true.
And then a couple of years ago, you released, probably during the pandemic, you released this book, Heart Full of Rhythm, The Big Band Years of Louis Armstrong.
Yes. My book tour was a lot of Zoom interviews, as you can imagine.
Right. And, you know, along those lines and, you know, around that time, I think it was in 2022, and you won a Grammy Award.
It's true. Yeah, for best album notes. I co-produced the 7 CD set from Mosaic Records of actually Armstrong's 1950s recordings. Satch plays Fats, Louis Armstrong plays W.C. Handy, and I wrote a 30,000-word essay. I kind of consider it my fourth book. And, you know, thanks to the National Recording Academy, I have a Grammy. It's kind of, you know, absurd, but I'm honored.
That's amazing. And I was hoping that I can see that Grammy. You know.
I wish. The Grammy is upstairs, and it's on display in the Riccardi Museum.
So we're going to talk a lot about this album, of course, but we're also going to talk about your role as the director of research collections for the Louis Armstrong House Museum. But first of all, we're going to start with me asking you about your passion for Louis Armstrong. When did it get started and how?
Yeah, so I was born 1980. Armstrong died in 1971, so I never met him, never met his wife, never saw him live, nothing like that. But when I was 15 years old, I saw a movie, The Glenn Miller Story from the 1950s. Armstrong comes out, he does one song, and that one song, Basin Street Blues, was enough for me to be like, you know, that was pretty good. I think I want to hear more. And then that's when I discovered his 1950s recordings, and that was the moment that my whole life changed. And so at that point, I knew I needed to read everything and learn everything there was to know about Louis Armstrong, but I kept on bumping into this narrative that Armstrong was only a genius as a young man. And then in 1928, he sold out. He went commercial, and he spends the rest of his life smiling and singing "Hello, Dolly," and what a waste of a talent. And I didn't buy that. So I became fixated on his later years, the last 25 years of his life, because I thought that was some of the best music he ever created. I thought it was inspirational that he's up there on the charts, knocking the Beatles off and the Rolling Stones. And, he's still relevant in the late 1960s. He's also putting his career on the line. He's speaking out against racial injustice. And I just thought there was a story there. And so I started interviewing all the surviving members of his band, including just about everybody on the London concert, except for Lewis and the trombonist, Tyree Glenn. I got to all of them before they passed away. And then in 2006, I started going to the Louis Armstrong House Museum, to their archives, just as a researcher. And that was the final piece of the puzzle, because for the last 20 years of Armstrong's life, he would make these reel-to-reel tapes where he would talk about life, talk about music, talk about race, tell jokes. He would get angry. His whole life was on these tapes. And for a biographer, it's a dream, especially when you have somebody that I'll never get to meet, I'll never get to interview. But he kind of set it up for me that he put his whole life on tape. So I spent 3 years doing research and writing an Armstrong blog and doing some little lectures here and there. But then in 2009, I was hired to be the archivist for the Armstrong House. And so I've been there 15 years. I'm in charge of Lewis's trumpets. I'm in charge of the tapes. And then that first book came out in 2011. And honestly, at that point, I thought I was kind of done. I said, all right, well, the book I dreamed about in high school is out. I've got my dream job. I can kind of just relax now. But since then, it's actually been even better, because thanks to the good folks at Verve and Universal, I've been able to co-produce and write notes for probably a dozen Armstrong reissues in the last 10 years. And then the second book came out in 2020, third book coming out next year. I teach an Armstrong course. I'm all Armstrong all the time. That's the easiest way to put it.
That's really amazing story. How old were you when you first watched that? I think that was a James Stewart story movie that you were talking about. How old were you?
I was 15, and it was the mid 1990s. So, everyone else is listening to Nirvana and Wu-Tang and all that stuff. And
and so would you consider yourself? So I'm the odd one here, and I rediscover Louis Armstrong among my age group or something like that.
Nice.
Is that what it is?
Oh yeah, I mean, I was the only one. going through high school. At first, I was kind of quiet about it because, you don't want to get beat up. But, I'd go home and listen.
Okay. But, so what was it that, about that performance or that appearance in that movie, Basin Street Blues, or, just the Louis Armstrong character? What really captivated you?
I mean, for me, I think it was everything. It was just the joy that he exuded. There was something that just made me feel good. It was just like taking an antidepressant or something. He's on the screen for 5 minutes, and I said, wow, I feel better. His voice, I had never heard a voice like that before, and, immediately, kind of stuck out. And then, his trumpet, I mean, I had never heard a trumpet like that before. And I had been playing the piano since I was 7 years old, but I never really listened to jazz or anything. And just, that whole, it made me feel good. The voice, the singing, the sound of his trumpet, and just the swing of the band was so relentless in the 1950s. And I think there was part of me who, I kind of grew up listening to some like 1950s, 60s rock and roll and stuff like that. And there was something about just the swing of that band. I'm like, I can get on with this. And so now, that moment was almost 30 years ago. Yeah. And when I listen to him now, I feel good. It's still the joy. It's still the way he sings. It's still the sound of the trumpet. I still feel the same way about him now that I did that first time.
That's just amazing. I mean, these kind of early exposure. So I would say, probably Louis Armstrong is, introduction for you to jazz music, to the world of music. Wow, that's amazing. So now, great story. We're going to continue with that, but right now, why don't we choose another track to play from Louis in London? And we're going to talk about, when we come back, we're going to talk more about this record, because this is something special. So,
indeed.
Yeah. How about A Kiss to Build a Dream On? That's the third track after he played When a Sleepy Time Down South and Indiana, then A Kiss to Build a Dream On, which he really loved doing, especially in the later years too.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of his big pop hits from the early 1950s, and it's one of those songs that's been used in movies and TV commercials, and it's still one of the big streaming hits. But I want the listeners to pay attention to that trumpet solo because, this is a guy almost 70 years old here, and it's a spectacular solo. And the clarinet player in the band, Joe Marini, told me personally, so when Louis called Kiss to Build a Dream on, that was his signal to the band that he was feeling good. And so we'll talk more about that. But this is a good piece of evidence that he had a great night in London.
All right.
We're going to do a number for you that we did in the picture called The Strip. It's our recording of Kiss the Build a Dream On. Yes, give me a kiss to build a dream on, and my imagination will thrive upon that kiss. Sweetheart, I ask no more than this, a kiss to build a dream on. Yes, give me a kiss before you leave me, and my imagination will feed my hungry heart. Leave me one thing before we part, a kiss to build a dream on. When I'm alone with my fancies, I'll be with you, weaving romances, making believe they're true. Babe, give me your lips for just a moment. My imagination will make that moment live. Give me what you alone can give, a kiss to build a dream on. When I'm alone with my fancies, yes, I'll be with you. Oh, weaving romances, yata making believe they're true. your chops for just a moment, and my imagination will make that moment live. Yes. Give me what you alone can give. I can't stop in that dream.
我哋啱啱聽過嘅咧係 Louis Armstrong 嘅全新 reissue 嘅呢一張大碟 Louis in London 啊，呢一張大碟我攞住嘅呢一張，今日咧其實係有 visual 嘅，今日可以大家睇到我哋個樣㗎嚇，所以記住上到 D100 嘅網頁啦，去睇今日嘅 video 有影像嘅，有視像嘅直播嘅。咁嗱，啱啱聽過呢一隻歌咧係叫做 A Kiss to Build a Dream On。咁之前咧我哋就講咗好多其實關於 Riccardi 佢自己 grow up 嘅時候點解會愛上咗 Louis Armstrong 咧？佢就話好特別啊！佢嘅唱歌嘅聲音啦，佢好開心啦，一聽到佢嘅小號嗰個演奏咧，佢就即刻好開心啦。咁所以咧今日咧我哋會繼續講啦嚇。咁啱啱頭先佢揀咗一首，就係佢頭先同我講就係當 Louis Armstrong 好開心嘅時候咧。佢就會 signal 佢對 band 去玩呢一隻歌，而大家都知道，如果佢玩呢一隻 The Kiss to Build a Dream On 嘅時候咧，佢就係好開心。Okay, so we're coming back here, and oh, by the way, I gotta let you look at this T-shirt.
Oh, fantastic! That's great. I love it. I love it. I've got a Swiss Chris T-shirt, which was Lewis's laxative of choice, but we don't have to talk about that.
but we got to talk about this tune that you were just saying. When he feels wonderful, when he feels good, then he's gonna call A Kiss to Build a Dream On. Right? So
yeah,
it's the story behind that.
Yeah, so Armstrong's trumpet playing, I mean, in the mid-1930s, he almost blew out his lips, and he had to stop playing for a while, and then he kind of retrained himself on how to play the trumpet. And from 1935 to 65, he's Superman. He can do no wrong. But by the mid-1960s, he was starting to have some trouble with his teeth. And then in 1965, he had major dental work performed. And when he went back to playing the trumpet, you really need strong teeth and strong lips. And so after 1965, it took him a while. There's a lot of live concerts from 66 and 67 where you can hear he's in pain. He's still putting on a great show, but he's no longer able to execute what he was just a few years earlier. But then he had nights where everything aligned, where he felt good, he felt strong. And on those nights, you would think, maybe he would call a tune from the 1920s or something. But no, according to Joe Morani, he would call something like A Kiss to Build a Dream On. And that's when he said, all right, I'm feeling good tonight. We're going to go for it. And so that's one of those numbers that the real diehard jazz purists, they would kind of roll their eyes. Oh, it's another love song and it's a pop tune. But, that's some wonderful trumpet playing and just his singing, his phrasing. I mean, that's where Billie Holiday comes from. That's where everybody comes from. So, there's a lot to unpack in that one little performance.
So would you say that when you are studying and releasing your studies on, his magical later years, you're trying to do justice to his career? Would you say that?
Yeah, because, I mean, it's a funny thing. Those years were the most popular years of his life. He is beloved around the world. He's America's ambassador of goodwill. He's got these hit records. But the entire time, see, for me, I guess it was kind of a personal thing because I come from a jazz background. I have a master's in jazz history and research. And when I started hanging out with jazz historians and jazz musicians, there was always this kind of dismissal of later Armstrong that, West End Blues, 1928, all right, we can get on board with that. But then, oh, you're not going to tell me Hello, Dolly's great. You're not going to tell me, Kiss to Build a Dream On's great. And then, I'm in there, listening to him and listening to the live concerts and the studio recordings and realizing that, man, this guy is putting his soul into everything. It didn't have to be St. James Infirmary or blues or, one of the classics. Yeah, he could do it with anything. He could do it with Hello, Dolly. And so, that was kind of like the inspiration for my, entry into this world. Yeah. And, I wasn't the first. You know, there were other incredible historians, Dan Morgenstern, Gary Giddens, and you know, other musicians who got Lewis from day one. But I will say, you know, just seeing the response to this London album, I think a lot of those old criticisms have kind of fallen by the wayside. I think people are now embracing Armstrong in every decade and realizing that he brought something to the table every time he put that trumpet to his lips.
Yeah, very unique stuff. Every single decade is a little bit different, but you know, there's continuation too. Now, let me ask you this. So why after 56 years, right? So this is actually a 1969 recording. July 2nd, if I remember correctly, BBC recording. So why after 56 years, you and I think your co-producers, Ken Drucker, decided to reissue and expand on the original Brunswick LP, which is called Louis Armstrong Greatest Hits Recorded Live?
It's one of those things that sometimes you're so close to it and you don't even realize it's a great idea until, you know, you tell somebody else. So I've always known about these London recordings, and you know, we have Lewis's copy, you know, in the Louis Armstrong archives, and you know, through collectors I had access, you know, to the complete concerts and all that stuff. But you know, I would do these things for Verve, I would do these things for Mosaic Records, and for whatever reason I never thought of this. And then 2 years ago, Verve did a holiday compilation called Lewis Wishes You a Cool Yule, and it ended up on the Billboard charts. And all of a sudden, Verve was very interested in Armstrong. They came to me. yeah. So that was a big hit 2 years ago. And so Ken came to me and said, you know, do you have any ideas? You know, what could we do next?
Okay.
And it was, I think, but all of a sudden, you know, like the light bulb went off, because I thought of the London concert was recorded by the BBC, so it sounds great. There's a video, so immediately I dreamed of, oh, they can put it on YouTube, they can put out the visuals. And then I said, wait a minute. Not only does he play and sing beautifully, but it's got every hit everybody would want. So, you know, the average person on the street who wants What a Wonderful World and Hello Dolly, it's there. But then there's also the trumpet playing. We heard on Kiss the Bill to Dream On, that we heard on Back Home Again in Indiana. It's got all these hits from throughout his entire career. And then when Ken said, you know, do you want to write the liner notes? I said, sure. And I planted a seed in my 2011 book, and I said, let me see if I can put some water on that seed and see if it grows. And the seed was when Armstrong, 2 months after the BBC concert, he ends up in intensive care, and he doesn't perform for 2 years, and he spends most of that time at home in Queens. And that's when the BBC sends him this tape, and he falls in love with the tape, and he plays the tape for friends, and he sends the tape to musicians, and he writes on the box for the fans. And so I said, now there's like this kind of almost a tear-jerking story that he knows that this might be his last great performance. He wants to share it. And so he did get to share part of it. You know, as you mentioned, Louis Armstrong's Greatest Hits Recorded Live comes out 4 months before he passes away. It's a very good record. It's never been on the streaming platforms. It's always been hidden. But I said, now we have a chance. We could expand it. We could put 6 previously unissued tracks, and we could really make this something.
So what do you think you want people to learn about Satchmo that they have not already known? Because, you know, he's such a seminal figure in not only jazz music, but also in American history. Let's put it that way. You know, if, you know, I don't know, I don't remember where I heard it, but, you know, if there's one musician that you can put the face on a dollar bill, that would be Louis Armstrong, right? So he is that iconic, right? So with this release, are you trying to reach out to the people who usually would stream for music, or, you know, the younger generations, or, you know, it's a little bit more,
I think this release has something for everyone. So I have heard, you know, as you can imagine, I'm pretty plugged into the Armstrong community. And so I've heard from the hardened Armstrong fans who have everything and have heard everything. And at first they were kind of like, you know, All Stars 1968, you know, and they're writing me privately, you know, are you sure? I'm like, man, I wouldn't put my name on it if it wasn't good. And then they listen to it and they write back and they say, oh, you're right. It's sensational. And then, like I said, then the average fan who's just streaming, oh, look, a live version of What a Wonderful World. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And my hope is that, you know, when, so my hope is when they listen to it, you know, it's a gateway. You know, that's my ultimate hope, is that when you hear him at this late stage in the game, doing all these hits and having the time of his life, and once again, just making you feel good, people are going to want to say, yeah, what else is there? Who is this guy? And that's the point. Because to me, I mean, he is the most influential musician in the 20th century. I mean, completely changes the way people play music, changes the way they solo, completely changes the way they sing. But then he has his career, rags to riches, growing up poor in New Orleans, becoming a global ambassador, all these unpredictable things, knocking the Beatles off the charts, the civil rights angle, putting his career on the line, speaking out against racial injustice, breaking down barriers. And so I really think he is one of these seminal figures of the 20th century. And I don't think he got that respect during his lifetime. Now, over 50 years, I work for a Louis Armstrong museum, and here is an album that this past weekend was the #1 best-selling album on Amazon, all genres. It was #1, top everything you could dream of. And I feel like we're almost there, but I feel like they're going to be teaching him in the schools. The kids are going to learn about him. They're going to say, who are the greats? They're going to say it's Shakespeare, it's Mozart, it's Louis Armstrong. And so I feel like this release is going to get us one step closer.
This is the record to build a dream on.
Yeah, man.
So, okay, well, let's listen to another one of those big pop hits of his years. And I believe which one I'm talking about, but I do want you to say a few words about this version of Hello, Dolly.
Yeah, so the original Greatest Hits Recorded Live had a short version of Hello, Dolly that was used at the end of the concert. There's no trumpet playing. He sings one quick chorus, then he introduces the band, everybody applauds, and it fades out, the record ends. And I said, no. I said, earlier in the BBC show, he does a full version with a full trumpet solo and 2 encores. Every time you think it's over, he starts it again, and the crowd goes crazy. It's showmanship, but it's so much fun. And at this point, I did the math. He had been doing Hello, Dolly for 4 years, probably 300 nights a year. So we're talking about a song he's performed well over 1,200 times. And he brings so much joy and such fun. And, it's just all there. And if you kind of roll your eyes at it, just listen to the trumpet solo. It's one of his best trumpet solos on Dolly. It's got quotes of other songs, swinging like mad. And so this was one of those previously unissued tracks that's just like, even if you think Hello, Dolly is this kind of corny, trite thing, listen to this version, and then we'll talk.
Okay. All right. Let's listen to Hello, Dolly by Louis Armstrong.
Hello, Dolly. This is Louis. Dolly, mighty glad you're back where you belong. Are you looking swell, Dolly? I can tell, Dolly. You keep blowing, still growing, you still going strong. I feel the room swaying, the band playing. Old favorite tunes from way back when. So, show some snap, fellas. Find your empty labyrinths. Dolly, never go away again. So, God, the jingle bells this one. Darling, never go for bed. Don't you ever go for bed. Darling, slow Dolly, slow Dolly. Alrighty glad, alrighty glad, alrighty glad. Ah, you're looking swell over there. You're looking swell over here. You keep going, go it down. Dig this one, pick up on this one. Way back when Larry Real turning rap fellas. Yeah. Don't you ever go for bed. You ever go for bed. Hello, come low. Body glad, body glad, body glad, body glad, body glad. Oh, you're looking sweller. I'm gonna tell her. You keep blowing, away, go with Chung. Dig him, big up on there. Oh, my old favorite tunes, way back when Terry Glenn, take rap fellas. Yeah. Go away, go away, go away again.
我哋啱啱聽完嘅咧係佢1950年代、60年代，其實係佢嘅一個 hit song， 好非常之當陣時係 pop chart 好高嘅 Hello Dolly 啊嚇，咁啊呢一隻歌咧就令到好多嘅後生仔咧都聽翻 Louis Armstrong， 所以就係非常之重要嘅歌嚟嘅嚇。咁之前咧我哋亦都有講到。一路講到就係即係 Louis in London 嘅呢張碟點解要喺呢個時候出翻咧？咁 Ricky 頭先同我哋講就係佢希望以前嗰隻叫做 LP 啦，Brunswick Records 嘅 LP 叫做 Louis Armstrong Greatest Hits Record Live 咧，其實就從來冇喺任何嘅串流嘅平台啊 YouTube 啊等等咧係冇得聽，所以佢就希望咧憑住今次嘅呢個 reissue 同埋係一個 expansion 嘅版本啊，即係佢嗰啲歌係長好多嘅。以前嗰個 Brunswick 嗰個版本嘅 Hello Dolly 好短嘅啫，就係做一個 band 嘅 introduction。但係今次咧其實係佢將佢 expand towards 差唔多5分鐘咁長嘅，咁所以佢希望咧係藉住呢個機會等多啲人認識，亦都去 satisfy 一啲 hardcore 嘅 Louis Armstrong 嘅粉絲同埋佢哋嘅 scholar。So we got to talk about Hello Dolly because I know you know from the get-go that Louis Armstrong didn't like it all that much. You know, he was complaining like, "You call me up to do this tune," you know, something like that. I heard
he basically did it as a favor, you know, for his manager. So the Broadway show Hello Dolly was going to open up in January 1964, and the producers, they figured, you know, if we can get some musical act to record the title song, you know, maybe it'll give the play some more publicity. And so they happened across Louis Armstrong, and the producers of the show and the music publishers, they were friends with Armstrong's manager, Joe Glazer, and said, "Hey, do you think Louis Armstrong would do this?" And sure. Well, the first thing, this is 1963, and so Armstrong had not made a record in 2 years. He's still selling out, you know, every night and performing 300 nights a year. So he's still an icon, but it's the rock and roll era. The Beatles are coming to America. Yeah. And so the record labels, 6 record labels turned it down. They said, we're not interested. finally a smaller label, Cap Records, they said, all right, we'll take a chance. Lewis comes in the studio. They do Hello Dolly, and according to the musicians in the band, he was just kind of like, this is the song. This is what I'm here for. And so they do it. They kind of tossed it off. They did another song that day from Bye Bye Birdie called A Lot of Living to Do. And that one, everybody got excited. Even one of the writers who was there said, a lot of living to do, that could be a hit. So they leave the studio and go right back out on tour. And the producer of the session, Mickey Cap, he starts tinkering with it. He adds the banjo introduction. He puts some strings back there. And so the play opens up in January 1964. Gets great reviews, becomes a big Broadway hit. And while the buzz is there, boom, Cap Records puts out Hello Dolly as a single, and it starts climbing the charts. And Armstrong, by this point, 2 or 3 months have gone by. He's out in the middle of nowhere performing, and he hears the audience yelling, Hello Dolly, play Hello Dolly. And so the first night he smiles and just ignores it. The second night he smiles and ignores it. Finally, he turns to his bass player, Arvell Shaw, and he said, what the hell is Hello Dolly? And they remind him, he goes, no. I said, that was that song we recorded last time we were in New York. And so they actually had to go to like a jukebox and get the record and listen to it over and over. And Lewis wrote down the lyrics, and the piano player wrote down the chord changes. The next night they put it in the show. It was pandemonium. And at the same time, the Beatles come to America. And February 1964 is like the start of Beatlemania. They have 14 straight months of #1 hits. And then May 9th, 1964, 60 years ago this year, 62-year-old Louis Armstrong knocks the Beatles off the top of the charts. It's amazing.
That's a hero.
And so, as you can hear, by the time he gets to it in London, he had learned to love the song.
Oh my God. Well, that's a wonderful story. And I also know that there's a backstory to this last tune that we're going to hear today by the end of this interview, which is What a Wonderful World. Do you want to get to it before we talk about the House Museum, or you want to talk about
Sure. I'll tell the story because it kind of relates to the Armstrong house. But after the success of Hello Dolly, everything Armstrong recorded sounded like Hello Dolly. There was banjos and Broadway show tunes, and so he was kind of getting into a formula. Well, by the summer of 1967, the United States was in chaos. There were assassinations and Vietnam War and protests and race riots and civil rights struggle. And so the producer, Bob Field, said, we need a message of unity. We need a message of hope. We need a message from Louis Armstrong. And he hired a writer, George David Weiss, to write the song, What a Wonderful World. And then he brings in the orchestra and the choir. And, Louis doesn't even have to play trumpet. Louis shows up in the studio. They're recording it. Everything is beautiful. But Bob Field did not tell his boss, a guy named Larry Newton, was the president of ABC Paramount Records. And Larry Newton wanted another Hello Dolly. So he comes down to the studio and sees strings and voices, and he sees Louis Armstrong singing this sentimental song. And Newton goes, you're not going to waste my money on this. And so they actually got into a big argument while Louis is recording the most peaceful anthem in the world. There's the producer and the president of the record company fighting in the background. So they finished the recording, but Newton decided to sabotage it and does not really promote it in the United States. So it kind of bombs here in America. Nobody really knew it. Louis was doing it every night, but it wasn't being played on the radio. It wasn't being advertised. But they forgot about London, and they forgot about Ireland, and they forgot about South Africa, and they forgot about, all the rest of the wonderful world. And so by April 1968, it starts climbing the charts. On May 4th, 1968, it's #1. And it climbed over, Otis Redding and the Beatles, Lady Madonna, and all these things. And so Armstrong had a worldwide hit, but it still never became really known in America until it was used in the Robin Williams film, Good Morning Vietnam, in 1988. And then all of a sudden, Armstrong was back on the pop charts 17 years after he died. And now...
Was it because of the Robin Williams movie that people started listening to this song again?
That's when people started listening to it again. And I don't know if this is going to show up here on Zoom, but it was recently certified 5 times platinum. It sold 5 million copies. And I got the copy of the platinum record.
God. Wow.
So I don't have the Grammy with me, but I do have this. I'm still looking for a place on my wall to hang it. But that just came in a few weeks ago, because here we are, 54 years after he passed away, and he's got a 5-time platinum record. So it's the little song that keeps going.
I think the most interesting thing is why Bob believed in the song, but Larry Newton, the president of the ABC Paramount, didn't.
Right. Yeah, and the ironic thing is when it became a worldwide hit, we have press releases in the Armstrong archives, about what a hit it is and who's the guy giving quotes. Larry Newton. By that point he was taking all the credit. Oh yes, it's a big hit, accepting all the awards and all that stuff. So, kind of an ugly thing, but the song lives on. Very few people know.
When he gave the speech, did he say, "I always believed in this tune"?
Yeah, probably. Exactly. I was behind it the whole way.
What a wonderful world as like kind of like the what do you call it? The magnum opus for Louis Armstrong is kind of an interesting thing. It's extremely interesting. It is. I would say there's a sense of humor there too, because this song is the farthest away from what he had been doing his whole career. His jazz stuff, his swing stuff.
Right.
Sounds nothing like What a Wonderful World. But when he sang that song, there's something, it just touches your heart. Every time you hear Louis Armstrong's voice, just, with a very sentimental way of just singing those lyrics, the dark sacred night and
right,
and they're really saying I love you and all those, it really touches you.
You believe him. That's the great vocalist Catherine Russell. I was talking to her one time, and that's what she said. Every time I hear Louis Armstrong sing, I believe him. And I think that's what it comes down to. I won't name names, but there have been so many people who've done What a Wonderful World in the last 50 years. And they changed the arrangement, they changed the tempo, they try making it something different, something their own, but you don't get that kind of emotional wallop like when you hear Louis, and that's because he is singing from the heart. And I think anytime people hear it, you can have ice going through your veins, but you hear that song and all of a sudden you'll feel a tear form, and it's like, man, he got me again.
Oh yeah, it's just amazing. Now let's talk about the last thing that I really want to talk about is the House Museum of Louis Armstrong, which is located, I believe, in Queens, New York. Is that where he spent much of his later years at?
Yeah, and so he got married to a dancer named Lucille Wilson in 1942. Their honeymoon was 6 straight months of one-nighters. Every night they're living out of a suitcase. He's performing every night. They're going from hotel to hotel, living on a bus. And Lucille said, "This is not what I signed up for." So she had spent part of her childhood in Corona, Queens, and a friend of hers let her know that there was a house for sale. So she actually bought the house and put down the down payment and moved in without telling Louis. Huh. He's out on the road on tour, and finally his tour ended, and she said, "Surprise, I have a house." And by this point he had been living in hotels and apartments for so long that when he saw this house, he just fell in love with it. And the neighborhood, it was an integrated neighborhood, and it was all working class people, people who had jobs, and who's a waitress, who's a house painter, who's a barber, just real people. Yeah. And so he fell in love with the neighborhood. And by the 50s and 60s, I mean, he had enough money. He could have lived anywhere. He could have had a big mansion somewhere with a trumpet-shaped swimming pool or something, but he wanted to live a regular life, and Queens gave him that life. And so people always ask, what a wonderful world, when he's singing that song, what is he thinking of? He gave interviews. He talked about it. He said every time he sang that song, he thought about the kids on his block. And he said he saw 3 generations grow up, and they all came back to visit him. And so when he would sing, I hear babies cry, I watch them grow. He is thinking of those kids he had watched grow up in Queens. And the amazing part is now, his house is a museum. Last year, we opened up a brand new state-of-the-art facility, the Louis Armstrong Center, right across the street. Uh-huh. And those kids, now they're in their 50s, their 60s, some older, 70s, 80s. They're coming back now. And they tell us stories about what it was like hearing his trumpet, or when he would invite them, get them ice cream and all this kind of stuff. And so the sense of community is still so strong. And, I think it means a lot to us that this record is doing so well, that people still are listening to What a Wonderful World, because then they say, we want to learn more. And we're there. We have the museum. I'm in charge of the archives. And it's right there. If you fly to New York, if you go to LaGuardia Airport, you're 10 minutes away. If you're in Manhattan, you're maybe 30 minutes away. But the website's lewisarmstronghouse.org. And if anybody listening out there, if you find yourself in New York, definitely come say hello.
How many exhibits are there in the museum?
So the new building has a permanent exhibit that was curated by Jason Moran, the great pianist and composer, and you'll see Lewis's trumpet, his Grammy. Jason also curated an exhibit of Lewis's collages. So in his spare time, he would cut out photographs and newspaper clippings and all this stuff and scotch tape them to the outside of little 7-inch reel-to-reel tape boxes. And so he was we didn't know this when he was alive, but he was also kind of like an artist in that way, a visual artist. And so there's an exhibit of the collages. There's a table in the middle of the room. It looks like a record, actually, but it has 8 screens, and there's digital exhibits. So you can spend hours there watching videos, Lewis and Billie Holiday, Lewis and Duke Ellington. You could learn the recipe for red beans and rice. So there's all of that. Plus, we have the gift shop, and we actually have a 75-seat performance space. So we've had Jason Moran, we've had Emmett Cohen, we've had Wycliffe Gordon, we've had all these incredible musicians performing there. I give lectures. This week we're doing a listening party where visitors for free, they can bring 78s, so they can bring LPs, and we just spin them in the jazz room and all sit there and listen together. And so that's the new space, but the crown jewel is really the house. No one has lived in the house since Lewis and Lucille. And so when you come, you start in the new museum, you can see all the exhibits and spend a lot of time there. But then you walk across the street and it's like walking through a time portal, because when you go in the house, a docent takes you around, but there's all the furniture and there's the paintings and there's the old stereo. And then we hit buttons and you hear his voice in the rooms. And it's, I don't want to give it all away, but it's a magical experience.
It's the Mr. Armstrong's neighborhood.
Exactly. Yep. 100%.
So is it open every day?
It's open right now. Since the pandemic, we're open 3 days a week, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday.
Okay.
But you can go on our website and you can pick the time of your tour, and you can book it in advance. And am I always there? I'm not always there. So about almost 10 years ago, we got a $2.7 million grant to digitize the entire Armstrong archives. And so during the pandemic, I started working a lot from home. So this is actually the home office. And so I've got hard drives, I've got the cloud, I've got the whole archives at my fingertips. So I do a lot remotely now, but I just love being there. And so, if you are coming, ask for Ricky. And if I'm there, I'll definitely come down and show you around.
All right. That's great. Thank you very much. And we can also follow you on Instagram. Is that?
Yeah, Dippermouth is my name personally. You can follow my Armstrong exploits. And then the Louis Armstrong House, I also help run that page for everything going on in Queens. So yeah, keep following the saga.
Sure, I'll do that. So the Instagram is Dippermouth, right?
Dippermouth. Yeah, that was his original nickname in New Orleans.
Thank you very much for being here today. And I'm gonna just switch over to Cantonese just a little bit before we listen to the last song, which is a very important song of the 20th century. What a wonderful world. So it's great to have you here with us today, Ricky.
Thank you, Roger.
Look forward to seeing you in person and probably in Mr. Armstrong's neighborhood.
Yeah, man. Come by anytime.
All right. 咁啊，啱啱我哋咧同 Ricky 咧就傾咗好多關於Hello Dolly 同埋 What a Wonderful World 嘅一啲嘅 backstory 啦。原來一開始嘅時候Louis Armstrong 其實都唔係咁中意Hello Dolly 隻歌，但係咧佢越嚟越紅啊！隻歌佢都完全估都估唔到，佢之後就愛上咗呢一隻歌。之後 What a Wonderful World 頭先都有講到，原來 ABC Paramount 嘅老細係唔想 Louis Armstrong 唱啲咁煽情嘅歌嘅，但係 Bob Thiel 咧覺得當陣時又美國總統 JFK 又被刺殺啊，又有呢一個越南嘅戰爭啊，好多好差嘅事件發生，佢覺得佢需要去Louis Armstrong 去 believe Louis Armstrong 去唱 What a Wonderful World 唱俾大家聽嘅時候，大家咧都會被感動，而真係嘅50幾年後嘅今日，大家都仲係非常非常之感動。咁我哋亦都有講到 Ricky 嘅呢個Louis Armstrong House Museum 嘅一啲嘅藏品啦同埋佢頭先都有講到，如果大家咧去到 New York 嘅時候咧，星期四、星期五同埋星期六咧，大家都可以去到 House Museum 嚟到去參觀嘅。咁最後一首歌送俾大家嘅係 What a Wonderful World, and thank you very much for a wonderful interview today with Riccardi. Thank you very much for being here.
Thanks, Roger. Pops his tops.
Yeah.
I see trees of green, red roses too. I see them blue for me and you. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. I see skies of blue and clouds of white, bright blessed days, dark sacred nights. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. The colors of the rainbow, so pretty in the skies, also on the faces of people going by. I see friends shaking hands, saying, how do you do? They're really saying, I love you. I hear babies crying. I watch them grow. They'll learn much more than I'll ever know. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Yes, I think to myself, what a wonderful world.
Hello， 我係 Andre， 爺爺嫲嫲金婚快樂，你收聽緊爵士鍾情。
one more time. Let's try it one more once.
Wow！ 好震撼嘅 April in Paris 嚟到開始 Part 2嘅爵士鍾情 In Love with Jazz， 繼續有我 Roger Chung 鍾一諾同大家分享一啲好正嘅爵士音樂啊嚇。咁啊 Part 1咧，我哋同 Riccardi 傾完 Louis Armstrong 之後，我哋去嚟到 Part 2咧，我會將兩個主題嚟到夾埋一齊嘅。咁啊啱啱我哋講過啦 Paris 嘅呢個主題啦。而亦都有另一個主題，就係啱啱我哋頭先咧喺 Jingle 嘅時候聽到我個仔 Andre 亦都喺度祝福我爸爸媽咪金婚快樂，即係50週年嘅結婚紀念日啊！今日啊8月3號咁咧喺度咧，我就將呢兩個主題夾埋一齊啦。所以我以下落嚟嘅介紹嘅呢啲嘅歌曲咧，都係同巴黎嘅浪漫啊、愛情啊呢啲咧有關嘅嚇，咁啊將呢兩個主題夾埋一齊嚟到去送俾我爸爸媽咪之餘咧，我哋亦都係大家唔認識我爸爸媽咪都唔緊要啊，就係聽啲好正嘅同爵士音樂有關嘅嚇，同巴黎有關嘅一啲好正嘅音樂，就係咁簡單嚇。啱啱聽過呢一個版本嘅 April in Paris， 雖然我哋而家已經去到 August 啦，8月啦，唔係4月啦，但係呢一隻歌咧，乜嘢月份聽都係咁正嘅，尤其是呢個版本嘅 Count Basie and his Orchestra 呢個版本嘅 April in Paris， 真係每一次聽都係聽到非常之興奮嘅。咁我哋唔好停啊，我哋繼續落嚟。播以下落嚟嘅呢一隻，我哋有 Jack Costanzo 嘅 I Love Paris， 唔知大家係咪都好中意巴黎咧？咁巴黎點會唔中意？今年嘅奧林匹克當然就係喺巴黎舉行啦。咁啊 Paris 2024， 每一個全世界嘅眼睛啊，都係抱住個電視機去追捧自己喜歡嘅運動員喺巴黎嗰度睇下佢哋嘅表現如何啦。咁啊當然香港唔例外，我哋今年咧非常之犀利。喺我錄呢一集嘅時候咧，我哋已經攞咗4個牌啦嚇，2金2銅2銅都係何詩蓓呢一個女飛魚之後2個金亦都係 fencing， 我哋有張家朗同埋今年由2024嘅 Paris Olympic 爆紅嘅江文慧 Vivian Kong 喺度咧，恭祝佢哋咧攞到獎牌，但係咧攞唔到獎牌嘅選手咧，我哋其實咧都係非常之鼓舞啊！見到佢哋嘅努力我經常咧都會喺呢一啲運動員嘅身上咧係好被鼓舞嘅，真係我覺得，因為佢哋嗰種 determination 啊，嗰種 concentration 啊，嗰種集中嗰種嘅不屈不撓嘅精神啦，無論輸定係贏都好，都係對於我嚟講真係一個好大嘅鼓舞嘅好多時候我都覺得非常之 inspired 嘅，咁冇辦法啦，即係好中意睇奧林匹克運動會，就係因為呢一種咁樣嘅體育精神好觸動到我。咁今年仲要喺巴黎舉行，浪漫都市舉行所以真係冇辦法，一定要播以下落嚟呢隻歌I Love Paris。
I hope you have enjoyed our little tour, but there are so many places I have had to leave out, such as Notre Dame, Versailles. So, in the hope you will join me someday in Paris, until we meet again, let me say no goodbye, but au revoir.
好正嘅呢個版本啊 ，Jack Costanzo 嘅 I Love Paris。而家落嚟嘅，我要繼續播啲同巴黎有關嘅歌。唔知大家咧有冇睇到奧林匹克嘅今次嘅呢個 opening 嘅呢個開幕禮咧，非常之過癮啦！我要用呢個字嘅，真係用過癮嚟形容好多嘅佢哋嘅文化嘅特點啊可以喺今次嘅呢個開幕禮咧，你都會見到嘅。咁播咗好多嘅歌曲啦，一路咧啲船一路出啲運動員一路出嘅時候，佢哋亦都有好多唔同嘅表演啦。咁當然其中一隻嘅，我喺呢度咧，今日要同大家去播嘅係一隻 classical Offenbach 嘅 Can Can Can， 而今次我要介紹俾大家嘅一個爵士嘅版本啦，由 Jerry Sharp and His Music 玩出嘅呢一個版本嘅 Can Can Can， 我哋不如聽下呢一個爵士版嘅 Can Can 舞點樣跳出嚟咧。 聽完 Jerry Shard and his music 嘅 Can 之後咧，我哋聽到嘅係 Clifford Brown and Max Roach 去玩 Bud Powell 嘅呢一隻名曲爵士嘅關於巴黎嘅名曲 Parisian Thoroughfare 啊，咁啊非常之精彩嘅一隻歌啦，即刻帶到大家咧好似去咗巴黎一樣啊！我覺得真係咁啊，講起今次嘅呢一個奧林匹克巴黎2024嘅開幕禮啦。不得不提嘅係 Celine Dion 嘅出現啦嚇，咁啊好多人都非常之關心佢啦，因為佢之前係有病啊，又非常之瘦咁樣，咁啊好耐都冇粉墨登場，好耐都冇同大家去獻佢嘅歌藝啊，獻佢嘅呢一個金桑子，咁啊今次咧喺巴黎嘅巴黎鐵塔上邊咧，我哋就係見到 Celine Dion 佢唱 Edith Piaf嘅呢一隻名曲啊 Hymn à l'amour， 咁啊非常之精彩啦，咁啊大家都覺得聽到如痴如醉，同埋係有一種嘅，我覺得係有一種嘅情意結嘅，其實即係尤其是喺90年代嘅時候聽 Celine Dion 佢嘅一系列當陣時90年代一系列嘅 hit song 啦，包括當然有 Titanic 啦，係咪等等嘅一啲嘅 hit song 啦，其實係有一種情意結喺度嘅，所以對於好多人嚟講係好耐冇聽過咁樣嘅咁大氣嘅一個 performance， 咁啊久違嘅 Celine Dion， 咁啊今日喺度咧，我同大家分享嘅就係佢唱嘅嗰首歌嘅原裝。由 Edith Piaf 法國歌后 Edith Piaf 命令法國命令 Edith Piaf 嚟到唱出嘅 Hymn à l'amour 喺度送俾大家。
Le ciel bleu sur nous peut s'effondrer et la terre peut bien s'écrouler. Je m'aborde si tu m'aimes, je me fous du monde entier. Tant que l'amour inondera mes matins, tant que mon corps frémira sous tes mains, je m'aborde les problèmes, mon amour, puisque tu m'aimes. J'irai jusqu'au bout du monde, je me ferai teindre en blonde si tu me le demandais. J'irai décrocher la lune, j'irai voler la fortune si tu me le demandais. Je renierai ma patrie, je renierai mes amis si tu me le demandais. On peut bien rire de moi, je ferai n'importe quoi si tu me le demandais. Si un jour la vie t'arrache à moi, si tu meurs, que tu sois loin de moi, je m'aborde si tu m'aimes, car moi je mourrai aussi. Nous aurons pour nous l'éternité dans le bleu de toute l'immensité, dans le ciel, plus de problèmes, mon amour, crois-tu qu'on
Hymn à l'amour 向愛情唱出嘅城市一首詩歌 Edith Piaf 非常之精彩嘅一首歌曲啊！我覺得呢一隻歌係會聽到嗰個 melody 啦，真係好聽到毛管動嗰一種嚟嘅，我覺得係。好啦，咁啊，以下落嚟呢，我就繼續介紹一啲同巴黎同愛情有關嘅爵士音樂俾大家。咁啊，收錄喺 Chris Botti 嘅最新嘅大碟上年推出嘅 Volume 1裏邊嘅呢一隻歌，我哋有 Paris feature 一位 vocalist 佢係叫做 John Splithoff， 我哋細心欣賞下呢首歌。
Pour me one more glass of wine before we say goodnight, and lay beside me underneath the stars.And won't you kiss me one more time before this wine goes to my head, and I wake tomorrow wondering who you are, because I don't know your name and you don't know my story, but if the wine is the one to blame, then let's greet the early morning, because it's getting late and it's Halloween. It's only you and me, but the city's made for passing lovers, loving leisurely. Beside me underneath the stars, and won't you kiss me one more time before this wine goes to my head, and I wake tomorrow wondering who you are, because I don't know your name last time I saw Paris, her heart was warm and gay. I heard the laughter of her heart in every street cafe. The last time I saw Paris, her trees were dressed for spring, and lovers walked beneath those trees, and birds found songs to sing. I dodged the same old taxi cabs that I had dodged for years. The chorus of their squeaky horns was music to my ears. The last time I saw Paris, her heart was warm and gay. No matter how they change her, I remember her that way. The chorus of their squeaky horns was music to my ears. The last time I saw Paris, her heart was warm and gay. No matter how they change her, I'll remember that way. Paris.
你啱啱聽完嘅 Chris Botti 好輕鬆 Bossa Nova 嘅 feel 嘅 Paris 之後咧，正唔正？即係喺呢一個用呢一個巴西嘅音樂咧講述 Paris 呢一個地方好特別嘅一個 feeling 我覺得Chris Botti 嘅呢首 Paris。之後我哋聽到嘅係 The Four Freshmen 嘅 The Last Time I Saw Paris。講完 Last Time I Saw Paris 之後咧，咁我奧林匹克又未完嘅，我哋仲有成個禮拜嘅精彩嘅節目精彩嘅體育項目咧，等住大家去睇嘅咁但係咧聽完 The Last Time I Saw Paris 之後咧，我覺得不如播一隻同呢一個Paris 嘅藍調怨曲係有少少關係嘅歌啦。咁呢一隻歌咧，英文名就叫做 Paris Blues， 但係咧French 叫做 Asserté。我哋有 Frank
Sinatra。Gone and got the blues in Paris, Paris blues called Asserté. How can I be blue in Paris? It's easy 'cause you're far away. Can't lose this blues, this Asserté. Sidewalk tables filled with people, always happy, always gay. Still I'm all alone in Paris, praying you return someday. Can't lose this blues, this Asserté. Spring Springtime Eiffel Tower, funny taxis, the kids at play. Paris without you is lonesome, yearning more and more each day. Can't lose this blues, this azure tail.If you knew how much I need you, you'd come back to me to stay. Having you with me in Paris really is the only way to lose this blues, this azure tail. These Paris blues,This azure tail.
Azure tail, Frank Sinatra。我哋聽完 Frank Sinatra， 不如聽下另外一位嘅歌王 Nat King Cole。咁啊，今次嘅呢隻 Nat King Cole 咧，大家非常之熟悉嘅呢首歌。不過呢一個版本咧，大家可能未聽過，因為 Nat King Cole 會唱法文。唔係嘛 ？Nat King Cole 唱法文，不如聽下 Nat King Cole 唱法文又係一種乜嘢感覺？我覺得咧佢好似唱緊英文咁嘅，但係又真係法文嚟嘅喎。我哋不如聽下呢一隻嘅 Love Love in French。
Toi qui n'as peut-être pas compris quand.Je t'ai dit en quittant Paris, je m'en vais le cœur allumé. Je sais bien qu'un jour dès que je le pourrai dans ton pays, je reviendrai. Toi qui ne m'avais rien répondu, je sais que tu ne m'avais pas cru.Et pourtant me voilà, tu peux avoir confiance en moi, je ne repartirai pas. Toi qui n'as peut-être pas compris quand je t'ai dit en quittant Paris, je m'en vais le cœur allumé. Je sais bien qu'un jour dès que je le pourrai dans ton pays, je reviendrai. Toi qui ne m'avais rien répondu,Je sais que tu ne m'avais pas cru. Et pourtant me voilà, tu peux avoir confiance en moi, je ne repartirai pas. Je ne repartirai pas. Je ne repartirai
pas.Nat King Cole 唱 Love Love in French， 佢唱法文真係非常之有趣嘅一件事嚟嘅。咁Nat King Cole 唱法文，佢本身當然係唱英文嘅，佢又唔係真係識法文嘅。不過咧，即係佢紅到咧，經常咧都會錄唔同嘅語言啦，尤其是佢中意錄 Spanish 啦，大家一定會聽過佢嘅 Spanish 嘅歌啦。如果睇過王家衛嘅電影，經常都會聽到 Nat King Cole 嘅西班牙話嘅歌曲嘅，但係原來佢連法文都有嘅喎。但係呢一隻歌曲嗰個感覺就真係好正咯，即係一聽到就開心㗎呢一隻歌嚇。我哋有 Love Love。咁講起法文嘅歌曲，不如播一隻好正嘅法文嘅歌曲，連個歌名都係話好正咁解，真係好美好。It's so good, c'est bon。我哋有 Jack Cooper and Terry Snyder 嘅呢一個版本送俾大家。 我記得我細個嘅時候咧，又係喺爸爸揸車嘅時候啊，一家大細去玩啊，去赤柱或者淺水灣揸住架車嘅時候咧，經常都會聽 D100， 而佢有一首歌咧係同 Paris 有關嘅。咁啊，既然今日我哋講緊嘅係我同我爸爸媽咪嘅50週年嘅金婚紀念喺度啦，我諗起呢一隻歌曲啊嚇，咁啊叫做 D100 嘅 Under the Bridges of Paris， 非常之浪漫嘅一隻歌啊！大家可以諗到即係喺巴黎嘅一啲嘅橋底下嗰一種嘅感覺可能喺電影裏邊你都會睇過，係幾浪漫嘅。我覺得係，我哋不如聽下 D100 點樣將呢一種浪漫嘅情調唱出嚟啊！
Would you like to be down by the Seine with me? Oh, what I'd give for a moment or two under the bridges of Paris with you.Darling, I'd hold you tight, far from the eyes of mine, under the bridges of Paris with you, I'd make your dreams come true.Darling, I'll hold you tight, far from the eyes of night, under the bridges of Paris with you, I'd make your dreams.Come true.
D100 Under the Bridges of Paris。哇！話咁快已經嚟到 Part 2嘅尾聲啦，喺度咧要送上最後一隻歌俾大家。咁今日非常之開心，用2個鐘頭嘅時間同大家又傾咗偈啦，同 Riccardi 講 Louis Armstrong 有隻碟啦亦都帶大家用音樂去到巴黎去感受嗰一種浪漫嘅氣氛，亦都係啦可能大家會聽住呢啲嘅歌曲一路睇住奧運記住上到去 Facebook page 去打卡啦！今日唔記得叫大家去打卡記住上到去打卡咁今年咧亦都非常之開心啦！奧運香港贏咗唔少嘅獎牌，咁有啲人就話香港嘅體育嘅發展啦，就即係睇到啦，即係原來係可以好好嘅咁樣。咁我覺得香港嘅體育發展咧有待進步嘅，真係。但係呢一個係一個非常之好嘅契機嘅，其實係原來可以話俾大家聽，香港嘅運動員都可以登頂，都可以成為世界第一。所以咧我覺得呢一個係好值得社會上下嚟到去一齊 即係我覺得係 seriously 認真地對待嘅一件事咯，就唔好淨係覺得體育就只係體育咁簡單，唔係嘅。我覺得體育係可以俾到大家，除咗娛樂之外，係真係可以 inspire 到我哋，睇到大家嘅努力佢哋嘅汗水，佢哋嘅不屈不撓嘅精神，佢哋嗰種明明落後，但係點樣一分一分咁樣去追平甚至去贏呢一個比賽，逆轉勝嘅呢一啲嘅精神，真係非常之值得咧大家去鼓舞，亦都去學習嘅好，咁喺度咧送上最後一隻歌俾大家。咁今日咧其實亦都係頭先有講到啦，係我爸爸媽咪嘅金婚紀念日50週年嘅紀念日，所以咧喺度送上非常之浪漫嘅呢一隻歌。咁頭先今集嘅 Part 1我哋講 Louis Armstrong 開始今集爵士鍾情，我哋亦用 Louis Armstrong 嚟到去結束今集嘅爵士鍾情。我哋有粉紅色的一生 Louis Armstrong 嚟到去翻唱重新演繹法國命令 Edith Piaf 嘅 La Vie en Rose， 用呢一隻歌嚟到結束今集爵士鍾情 In Love with Jazz。 香港運動員加油，港隊加油 Yeah Good night 拜拜。
Close and hold me fast, the magic spell you cast. This is La Vie en Rose. When you kiss me, heaven sighs, and though I close my eyes, I see La Vie en Rose. When you press me to your heart, and in a world apart, a world where roses bloom. And when you speak, angels sing from above. Everyday void seems to turn into love song. Give your heart and soul to me, and life will always be La Vie en Rose.